What is up, everybody? This is Lyle with No Hippie Trucking and Transportation, and I want to get a little personal in this video and just kind of talk about some of the fears that I have about being in the trucking industry. Now, I've had some irrational fears in my life. One fear that I had was being homeless, and that probably had something to do with, when I was, in my early 20s, I moved back to Colorado from San Diego. And that move, really depleted me financially. And, you know, I wasn't necessarily homeless, but I was on the road to being homeless if I didn't correct that ship pretty quickly. So, one of the things I did was, make me have a fear of being homeless. So, when I had the opportunity to pay off a property that I owned, I went ahead and paid that property off just to give me that security blanket and kind of ease those fears of being homeless. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm, pretty conservative when it comes to money. Now, when it comes to the trucking industry, the fears I have isn't necessarily about driving the trucks or anything like that. I mean, there's a certain amount of fear and respect that I have in certain driving conditions, but what scares me most has nothing to do with the operation of a vehicle or being late or being fired or any of that kind of stuff. Well, let me kind of go back. When I first started getting in or thinking about becoming a truck driver, I was talking to my former roommate, was in the Marines with him. We lived together for years after that, or a few years after the Marines, and he became a truck driver. So he's kind of always, given me a little insight into the trucking industry. And he's one of those guys that would just do it for free. I mean, well, I'm not sure if he'd do it for free, but he's like one of them real truck drivers. And anyway, when I was talking about getting into the industry, he was like, just go down to some truck stops and just kind of, talk to some people down there. I'm not that kind of a person. You see some truck drivers out here. As a matter of fact, I was trying to handle some stuff at a pilot a few days ago, and this guy was in there, and I don't know if he was just hadn't had any attention from anybody for a while, but he's up there, having a conversation that was a lot longer than it should have been with the cashier. So I don't know if that was, just from being on the road so long or whatever it was, but that's kind of, let's kind of talk about what happened when I went to the truck stop. Anyway, I'm not the type of person just to be going up and talking to people and stuff like that, so I just kind of sat around, kind of observed, truck drivers in their natural habitat, should I say. And one of the things I did was I just kind of sat in this Denny's and just kind of looked around, and I'm sitting in there at the Denny's, and all the truck drivers have on their truck driver hats, and if they don't have on their truck driver hats, they have on their telemarketing super trucker headset, and I'm just kind of observing everything. And I looked at there was a couple people actually, and there's one particular guy, and his face is like ingrained in my head, that had this 1,000-yard stare, like he just got out of Vietnam or something, or the Gulf War or whatever. But he had that look on his face, and it really, literally kind of scared me, in that I had that fear, that could end up, being me someday or something. And then the next time I saw that kind of really scared me, because it was after I'd made the commitment, was when I was driving out to Salt Lake City to go to orientation and training and all that. I stopped at a TA in Wyoming, and I was in the Taco Bell, and I saw this couple, and you could tell they'd been on the road for years and years and years. They looked like they were a team, and I was just kind of looking at it, and I was just like, I obviously don't know what they have or anything like that, but it kind of started stoking those fears of being in this industry for a certain period of time without having anything to show for it other than memories and stuff like that. So I don't plan on being in the industry for that long of a period of time. And one thing that I'm fearful of is that my time out here be wasted. And I've had a few people comment on videos, multiple people, telling me about going broke and, this kind of stuff. And, that does kind of stoke my fears a little bit. But one thing I will tell you is that if it's not making sense, I will shut this thing down. After being out here for almost a year, I have come to the realization that if you don't pull what you can out of this business, this is not a business to be in unless you are, like my friend, a super trucker that would, he'd probably, when he retires, just go out and drive his truck around empty just to be super trucking all over the place. But, I just don't see that as being the case. I feel like being a truck driver is a serious sacrifice. I look at it and, it's kind of like we're living 10 to 14 hours at a time. You drive for 10 hours, take a 10-hour break, turn right back around and do it again. And with the exception of a few times when maybe you have a load that's not, delivering right away, you might have a chance to relax, but you really aren't relaxing on your own terms. It's not like you're going and chilling out doing what you really want to do. You're at some random truck stop, and they're all pretty much about the same, except for this Road Ranger I'm at right now. Read the reviews on this place. Got a nice little buffet in there. Think they have crab legs some days of the week. Anyway, this is a nice truck stop, but this wouldn't be a place that I would just be chilling out at if I was just at home. So I feel like I'm making a sacrifice, and I'm assuming that most people that get into this business are, hopefully they have some kind of a goal on where they want to be, and they're just not out here with no plan or anything, because I could see that this industry could be one of those things where you put all these years in the road, and then have nothing to show for it. And that's a big fear of mine. I look at some of these other YouTube channels, and a lot of times they might be the more negative slanted YouTube channels, but some of these guys have been in the business for 7+ years, and through their own admission really don't have anything to show for it. And that is, that not only is a fear, it would absolutely make me feel stupid to put all this time in and not get something out of it. So hopefully this can serve as maybe a little bit of motivation for some of you guys that are, maybe aren't looking far into the future. Maybe you're in your 20s and really don't have any goals yet for, usually, you're not going to have too many goals in your 20s, but, I was talking to my friend, a few weeks ago, and, he's doing pretty well, but, he said he blinked his eye, or blinked his eyes, should I say, and 20+ years had gone by, and he really didn't think he got as much out of the trucking industry as he should have. Now, my goals are pretty clear cut. I don't have them written down or anything like that. They're kind of fluid, but there's several different ways to get to where I want to get. But one thing about it is, or one way I'm going to accomplish it, is not to be blowing money truck stop to truck stop, going and getting any unnecessary debt, or going and just doing anything that's going to derail that. And if the prime lease is, one of those things that would derail that, then that would be something that I would definitely shut down. Now, I don't see that as being the case. Everybody's telling me that this is the worst time of the year to be in, where freight's all low, whether it be the price of freight or the frequency of freight. So I'm figuring if I'm doing as good or better than what I expected to do now, when the summertime or spring and all that stuff comes, and it should all be even better. So, I just, somebody had told me back when I was in my 20s about investing and stuff. And, when you're in your 20s, early 20s, you really don't think about it. And I still think about this guy. I could picture, because I was selling cars at the time, I could picture the exact car he bought. I could picture almost what he looks like to this day. And what he said was, if you just save, $20 a week, and I forget the time frame, he said, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're like in your mid 30s. And I didn't really listen to him right away. And hopefully there's somebody out there that can kind of listen to what I'm saying now and start, at least planting that seed, because you may not take hold yet, but plant that seed about getting something out of this industry. Now, I'm not, what I'm trying to get out of it isn't, maybe what everybody wants to get out of it, but, think a little bit past, the next 10 hours of driving, or, something like that, and start trying to look a little bit further ahead in the future. Because, for me, unless I get what I want out of this business, it's just not worth it. The money's not worth it. The time, for the amount of time that you're putting into it, again, people are, will always say, and I had I was talking to somebody at a truck stop. It was this, I was in the South, I was in Georgia. This is maybe 2 months back, and I overheard this cashier talking about, she was talking to some other truck driver. She's like, well, it was over Christmas. It was Christmas Day. And she was talking to a truck driver. Now we kind of overheard the conversation. And I apologize for her having to work on Christmas. And she's like, well, you have to work on Christmas too, but you make bank. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, you know what? Even if think about this. Let's say you even made $200,000. Now, I don't, and you break that down into how much you make an hour, it's really not that much money. And I'm not talking about the hours of driving. I'm talking about while I'm out here, I count every single hour that I'm out on the road as an hour worked. Break down, I'll be out like a month. Break down however many hours there are in a month. Even if you want to do it over, let's say 20 grand a month, how much is that an hour? It's not a lot. So, and there's very few people making $20,000 a month. So, truck driving, unless they, are, some kind of a fleet owner and definitely have low overhead. But anyway, my advice, man, get something out of this. If you don't have any goals yet, think of some stuff that you want to accomplish and think far ahead, because like I said, I don't want you thinking back about No Hippie Trucking and Transportation saying, man, I wish I would have listened to him. 20 years gone by and I got 3 grand in the bank and some credit card debt and a nice car. Just doesn't make sense. Anyway, thanks for letting me get personal with you guys in this video. I appreciate it. Comment, subscribe, and I'm out.